Welcome to the SoCal Classic Car Podcast, the exclusive place for coverage of car culture in Southern California and the personalities that drive it. I'm your co-host, Jay Marash. The show is associated with SoCal Classic Car Storage, which provides South OC car lovers the opportunity to secure their vehicles in an environment made just for them. Our two facilities feature advanced security systems, 24-hour video surveillance, and a dedicated members lounge. In addition to storage, our expert sales staff offers consignment services for those looking to sell their cars. For more information, visit us at Laguna Hills or at SoCalCarStorage.com or on Facebook at Facebook.com/SoCalCarStorage. And now here's your host, Dean Marash.
Thanks, Jay, and welcome everyone to the SoCal Classic Car Podcast. Yes, it's true. I am your host, Dean Marash. Today in our studio, we're very fortunate to have one of our awesome SoCal Classic Car Storage customers, Chris Ashton. Chris has worked in computer game development for 24 years and has co-owned Turtle Rock Studios for more than a decade. During his career, he's helped ship numerous AAA games such as Command & Conquer, Red Alert 2, Counter-Strike, Left 4 Dead, and Evolve, and is currently hard at work on Back 4 Blood.
Man, he's partly responsible why I got bad grades in high school.
Partly. Chris is also an avid car enthusiast. He's owned fast cars since he's been a teen and has been driving high-performance cars for 20 years. He currently owns a 63 Belvedere Max Wedge, a Superformance GT40, a Caterham 420R, Lamborghini Performante, and a Pro Touring 1970 fastback Mustang called the Ruffian that he built himself and launched at SEMA last year. Welcome, Chris, to our first of many podcasts with our customers.
Thanks, Dean. Nice to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, Chris. One of the things we wanted to do was to dive in and learn a little more about our customers and what kind of spins their car propeller. We've our first 5, 6, 7 podcasts, we've been focused on people that are, making a significant contribution to the SoCal scene, and we thought, hey. And I think we've talked to you about this. We need to find out what's going on with our customers and why they do what they do and kind of get underneath the covers, if you will, a little bit. That's a little bit awkward, but I said it. But one of the things you and I have discussed in the past is this idea of all of our customers at SoCal have different reasons for being in the car hobby. It's very diverse. But what would you say is your area of passion or passions currently? What's floating your boat?
Well, I think first and foremost, just got to be a cool car, right? And then after that, racing. And so, whether that's different kinds of racing too, like drag racing or road racing. For me, there's always something cool about seeing race cars. And then if I can drive something on the street that's reminiscent of that, that makes me super excited.
So do you have a need for speed? Is that what this is all about, or is it more than speed? Is it handling? I mean,
it is.
Is it the feeling inside the car? Or?
It's everything, right? Like cars for me are very emotional, so it's a lot about how it makes me feel. There'll be cars that do all the numbers that just don't do it for me, So for example, like I've never owned a Porsche, just for what, and I know they're awesome, and all the journalists swoon over them, but and I went and did a Porsche day at the Porsche Experience Center.
Awesome.
And drove a GT3, and awesome car, had a lot of fun, but whatever reason it just doesn't. It
didn't make a connection with you.
It just doesn't, and that's okay, right? And it does for other people, and that's awesome, So for me, I try to pay attention to what makes me excited, what makes me happy. And then of course, driving the car is an experience, and they all drive differently. And So for me, I try to have a wide range too. So
Right.
like I have an old muscle car, that's my '70 Mustang, and then I have a Lamborghini, that's the modern exotic. But I don't feel, if I've only got room for 5 cars, then I don't feel the need to have like 3 Lamborghinis or
Right.
something, right?
Right.
Like I'm gonna spread it out. I'm gonna have a drag race car. I'm gonna have a track car. I'm gonna have a muscle car. I'm gonna have a car that's set up for autocrossing. So I try to have a wide variety of stuff, but it's all stuff that I'm excited about. I try to have different experiences, like
Right.
for me, there's a bucket list. I think if you're a car guy and you grow up, you have a bucket list, right?
Is your bucket list driven by what you couldn't have when you were young? That's my bucket list. All the cars that my dad said the engines were too big or the insurance was too expensive. I don't know if he was lying to me. He was an insurance man, but I couldn't get any big blocks, so that all the Mopar cars were out of the question. And I was always stuck with a small block Ford.
Right. Yeah. I don't. It's just for me, it's just what I grew up lusting over
Yeah,
for whatever
same thing.
reason.
Yeah,
Super funny. Like so I built that 1970 Mustang from the ground up. It's the first time I've built like every nut, bolt, screw, everything I did myself. So I built that Mustang, took it to SEMA, and just recently, my ex-girlfriend that I was dating in high school, she sent me a drawing of a Mustang, like a '70 Mustang
No
that
way.
I drew when I was in high school. Like, a elaborate drawing. Like I spent hours on this, right? And it's like, well, I picked that car, and I don't remember it,
Isn't that funny?
but I picked that particular car for a reason, right? And then later,
So you have been lusting over that car for some time.
yeah,
no doubt
so
about it.
that was a bucket list car. 1970 Mustang for me was a bucket list car. So, I've got another bucket list car. I had what was it? '96 Grand Sport. You remember those?
I do.
The Corvette Grand Sports.
Yep.
They were the blue ones with the red stripes on the fenders, the hash marks, black wheels, and the white racing stripes. I had one of those. Just awesome car that I like growing up playing games like Gran Turismo and stuff. Like, what cars did you gravitate towards when you played that game? And you could play the game and earn money and buy whatever car you wanted, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm doing that kind of in real life.
In reality,
I get to, and I had that Corvette for that Grand Sport. I had it for about 2 years,
Awesome.
and then I sold it because now I know what that's like, and
You got it out of the system.
yeah,
Right.
I've owned it and driven it and had that experience and enjoyed it, but it's taken up a slot. I could
It's
own.
in the way of the bucket list.
Yeah, I could own something else on my bucket list.
Get out of the way of the bucket list. I
So
think
I've
that's
kinda
what we
moved on.
learned here today.
Yep.
So tell us about this breathtaking green Pro Touring 1970 Mustang, the Ruffian, at SEMA this year. I mean, what an incredible car. We've seen people come by our facility and say, hey, can we look at the Mustang? Because you're out there on
Social media.
social
yeah.
media, Instagram, people that saw it at SEMA. So tell us a little bit about the inspiration and what you did there. You mentioned, you kind of nut and bolted it yourself, which is awesome. But give us some background.
I've always, when I was growing up, even going into college, you know how it is. Everybody's always after you for what do you want to do when you grow up.
Right.
I hated that question. It was awful. It's so stressful trying to figure out what you're going to be when you grow up. And even into college, I didn't know what I was going to do. And I think that's
Pretty common.
That's common. That's normal. I felt like college was where I was supposed to try different things and figure it out. Yet you have to choose a major, right? You
Right.
have to make a decision up front. Anyway, I wanted to design cars. That was
No kidding.
I drew cars growing up. I always had RC cars, and it's always been a thing for me. So I wanted to design cars. And so this Mustang was now, I was finally, at 42 years old at a place monetarily where okay, I can build a car. I can go buy a car. I can buy a bunch of parts for it, and I can work on it myself, and I can build and effectively kind of visually design my own car. Yeah, it's going to be based off of a 1970 Mustang, but it's my own thing, my own take. And so I wasn't interested. I wasn't. I wasn't even thinking really about what anybody else thought. I'm building this car for me. This is a Mustang that I want. And so what inspired me was like all the Trans Am cars back in the day. The 68, 69, 70 Trans Am series where they're racing the Corvettes against the Camaros, against the Mustangs. And
Cougars were in there too.
Yeah. And so, being a car guy, I've gone to a lot of races that, Long Beach Grand Prix and Monterey Historics and stuff, and you get to see these vintage classes, and those guys run them hard, and that's just a class that has always attracted me. And racing in particular, I get super excited about racing because when you look at a race car and you look at the different parts and everything, there's one goal, and that's to go fast.
Right, or to win.
And so they don't care what it looks like. And so there's a real simplicity to it all that I really like. And so what I wanted to do with this Mustang was build a Trans Am car, look like a Trans Am car, that I could drive to work, basically drive on the street.
Well, it's a Trans Am tribute car, but let's talk a little bit about the difference between then and now, racing then and now. Mm-hmm. I was having this discussion with my brother-in-law, Pat, just today about what's happened in NASCAR, and it's really fallen on hard times. We were trying to, figure out why has it become not very popular? What happened to the fan base and everything? And we were speculating about the length of the darn takes 3 hours to get a race in, and the tracks are too big and the people might be too far removed. But one of the things he said that I found very interesting is those cars really don't resemble any car on the street that you could see. You can't recognize it. And so it's hard to tell the Toyota from the Ford, from the Chevy. Mm-hmm. And I think that might be an important consideration because when I look at those Trans Am racers, those are the real cars.
Yeah.
So if you were to fiberglass those cars, that would be fine and did the shell exactly like the body. But they don't do that anymore. So do you think that's part of it? Do you think there's more of a magnetic pull or something to people? Was that?
I mean, when they were running Trans Am, I wasn't even born yet, so I don't know what that was like. But I know that I can go to the races. I know I can go to the historic races. I can look at that Mustang. I can look at a big block Corvette that's hauling around the track, and I know I can go buy a Corvette with a 454 in it. They're running. Essentially, I mean, they're custom built motors and stuff, but it's all the same stuff that you can buy. And I think that for me is like, okay, well, it's hard to be a fan of something that you think you'll never be able to own or achieve or whatever. It's not tangible. So for me, that's I like all the other crazy race cars and the different classes, but they don't relate to me very well because.
I think it's a similar take that you feel an attraction to something that you can get in and you can go, push around a course, as an individual without having to spend $1 million like an F1 or hundreds of thousands of dollars, whatever they do for a cup car.
Even the modern racing, say, let's take Corvettes for example. The modern Corvettes, the C7Rs that we're racing and doing Daytona and stuff, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans, like they look like the cars
exactly,
but underneath they're like a tube chassis and a different motor.
But those cars make a lot of noise. And they're a lot of fun to watch. I've seen them at
they're great,
Long Beach Grand Prix.
But it still is
not
kind of too far removed, I think, from what you can get.
Right.
I'd love to see, and I guess maybe part of that is safety these days. You have to. You can't race the
can't kill drivers like they did in the '60s. Every other race or something. That was crazy.
But anyway, yeah, I feel like it's got to be relatable. And I'd agree, but I never was a NASCAR fan, so I don't know like why is it falling off. I don't know. I understand like funny cars and stuff too. NHRA, that stuff. Everybody's on hard times.
So what do you like better when you built this Ruffian, which is awesome, and want to hear what the people said at SEMA? Do you like the designing part of the process, the fabrication, Is it all of the above? I mean, what really floats your boat?
Yeah, for me, it's the achievement, right? It's the
Okay.
if I work really hard today, and I get dirty and it's hard work and I don't even enjoy the job very much, but at the end of it, I got something cool accomplished on the car, then it's real satisfying, right?
It's a great day.
And I feel really good about it. So for sure, like I had a Pantera and I worked on it off and on without kind of a vision like I have on the Mustang. But with the Pantera, I owned it for 7 years. And then once I got to this point where I was like, okay, I'm done with it. I went to a few car shows. And then after that, I sold it.
Right.
Broke my dad's heart. But
Jason, you and I were looking at some Panteras down at Cars and Coffee today.
Oh yeah, I saw one.
Yeah, remember there were two of them, right, side by side?
I tried to take good photos of it. It was just terrible.
That's all right. You don't see Panteras too often, so
No.
we had to stop and look.
yeah,
Pretty
Panteras
rare.
were rad. Those were awesome
I didn't
cars.
know that Ford made those though.
Isn't that
I thought that
interesting?
was like some other like Italian.
Doesn't
company
look
or
like a
whatever.
Ford.
Well,
No,
they bought
it looks
it.
like a Lamborghini a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Di Tommaso made the body, right? And
So it is an
and
Italian influence, right?
It is Italian, yeah. Italian company built the whole body and everything. So it's a Ford
351.
motor in it, and the rest is, the transmission's EF, and then the rest is Italian.
So tell me a little bit about Turtle Rock Designs. So you're designing, you're coding, you're producing games for gamers around the world. And like Jason said, you probably disrupted his youth. Like a lot of other
especially at Counter-Strike. Oh my gosh.
people. Really, Dave? Was it that bad?
How many hours? I don't know. I gave my life to that game sometimes.
So what's your primary focus there? And tell us a little bit about what you do.
So we're an independent studio. So and we do the software development. So what that means is we are going to do all the code work, all the artwork, all that kind of stuff. We're going to make the actual game, the software that's going to run on the computer or on the console or whatever. But that's incredibly expensive. And generally the way that it works is that as an independent developer, you have to go find funding. So you have to go pitch ideas to all the different major publishers and try to find somebody who's effectively willing to give you a loan for you to build that game. And then once that game ships and starts selling, then you earn a percentage of every unit back towards paying back your loan.
So each game is an independent business plan almost, right? You're selling almost a business.
Yeah, it's a separate, each game is a contract, and you work on it month to month, and they check your progress against what you said you were going to do, and you continually sort of adjust the schedule and contract and everything according to how it's going, because when you're building something like a video game, it's one thing if you're building a sequel. If you already know you have this game, you have this world, and now you're going to add on to it, it's a known problem.
Right.
But a lot of what we do is we wind up building new IP, meaning that this is a game that doesn't exist before. And so when you're building something completely new like that, it's impossible to know all the bumps in the road along the way. Right. And so you're going to have to make adjustments. You're going to have to, this idea sounds really cool on paper. We're all excited about it. But then when we go try it out, it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And so then we have to go back to the drawing board and try something else, right? We try to be super efficient with that process, but the reality is you never know exactly how long it's going to take or what features are going to wind up being in the game or not. So you work through that with your partner, whoever's funding it. So it's a very close relationship. And then, so for the games that we're making, they're what people call AAA. These are like the big budget games that you would see at Walmart or, in stores. And now everything's moving to digital where you can download it offline. But AAA games, we might work on a game now for 3 years.
It's incredible. You and I have talked about this before, but it's a little shocking that it takes that long and there's that much code to develop a game. But they're so sophisticated and so realistic, it's almost difficult to tell reality from video game And I'm sure a lot of people immerse themselves and find themselves, not even being aware that they're, not in the world present with the rest of us.
Well, funny story. Like when I was in college, I was playing video games. I worked in the lab doing artwork, and so I had keys to the lab. So then me and a bunch of friends from the dorms would go into the lab at night, and we would play multiplayer games. And then we got kind of bored with those games, so I started modding the games. I started putting in new levels and different art and stuff, and I was just doing that so we could play different stuff. And my graphic design teacher said, this is a job. Like, people make money doing this. And I was like, what?
Really?
Yeah, it never
didn't dawn on you.
There weren't any classes. Nowadays there are classes for game design, and for animation and all that stuff, but not back then. So it just never dawned on me that, like, this thing I grew up doing, like, it was cars and it was games, computer. I was always on the Atari or Nintendo or whatever. And I even started, modifying them in college, and before I realized that was a thing. And so from that point on, it flipped that switch, and I was like, okay, well, I can go make money doing this. That's a rad job.
Now that you've done this for 20 something years, how does what you do at work impact what you're doing with cars like the Ruffian or any other car that you've taken and modified or designed?
Yeah.
Do you think there's, from, any part of the gaming environment that you do, does it impact your designs? I mean,
there's definitely a few things about that. One is everything I do and have done for 20 years is virtual, right? It doesn't exist in the real world. You have to log onto the computer and you hit play, you join a server, and now you're in this virtual game world, right? But it's not real. It's not, you can't touch those characters or that world. So for me, at some point after that, now when I come home on the weekends and I wrench on cars and I build a part, that's a thing that exists that I can hold.
It's tangible.
It's tangible, and it means something to me, and it's real. And I think that after 20 years of building virtual stuff, now I crave the physical stuff. Like I love to get dirt under my nails, and I pick up parts and build a thing. And then, like I said, at the end of the day, I have...
Sounds like therapy.
It is, and it's the yin to the yang, right? Like, yep. Because I think largely because I'm doing so much virtual stuff now, I'm pushed to do physical stuff to kind of counterbalance
offset it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's one side of things, which I think is interesting, and then the other part is that I do tend to bring a lot of my knowledge, tools that we use and stuff in the industry now, I bring back to cars. So, for example, we work in like Photoshop and Illustrator and stuff at work. We use a lot of those tools, and those tools can output to, say, a vinyl plotter, so I've always done my own stripes and my own logos and stuff like that on vinyl plotters. And my background is art as well, so I can do the artwork for that stuff, print that stuff out, put these things on my car, all the graphics, on my car as well. But now with 3D printing is something that I got into, just started at the very end of the Ruffian build. I got into 3D printing very heavily, where I was designing parts in 3D on the computer and then just hit print. And I've got a printer at home, and it prints out this 3D part, and 8 hours later I pull it off of the plate and I put it on the car.
Jay, when we do a follow-up podcast, can we do it over at Chris's garage? There's some awesome stuff in his garage. I don't know what it is, but
most of my awesome stuff's in your garage.
Oh, well, that's funny.
We're gonna host it over at the other building.
That's the finished stuff, It
is.
Yeah, I want to see these 3D printers cranking out parts and you generating graphics. I know the only thing that I know you didn't do on that incredible Ruffian is the paint. You sent that over to Max, a South County auto body.
Yep.
But love the colors, love the graphics. People come in, and it's very arresting, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, oh my God, what is this? Whose car is this? Who built this? It stops people in their tracks because it looks like nothing else out there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how it was going to turn out, right? I've not done this before. So for me to start this project and, like I said, build it for me, and then get done with it And now, like, I've taken it to SEMA. I've only taken it to one, sort of SoCal car show. But like I got mobbed at the car show, the in person, I think especially, you can watch all the videos and see the photos and stuff online, but there's something, the car has a real presence, and it's more than what I expected. I in my mind I was building a race car, and it was going to look good and have some modern touches, but primarily I wanted to go autocrossing with the thing, and just have a badass car. But I didn't think it would be I didn't think it would get so much attention online. It's not something I was thinking about.
Well, I think it's unique, and I think it's awesome, and it's, like you said, very cool. So that probably has a lot to do with it. Let's talk a little bit about our friends at Superformance Hillbank, Lance.
Yeah.
We had Lance on a podcast. He was great, by the way.
That's so funny.
He was awesome. He tells stories, and I could sit there and listen to stories all day long. There was a couple times I'm like, oh, crap, I forgot we're podcasting. But he's just a fascinating guy with a great background. But you're a multiple customer over there.
Yeah.
What do they got going? What's so unique about what they're offering that intrigues you, a guy who's, like you said, you like some exotics, you like muscle, but here's something kind of in between, a tribute to some, very sophisticated cars that were limited production back in the 60s. And
yeah, they tend to, well, everybody's got car taste, right? And I think that Lance has picked specific cars that he wanted them to build and projects that he went after, and I think that it just aligns really well. Like, I understand why they've done each one of those cars, and there's a pull. I'd love to have one of everything, right? Like, but I can't quite do that. But
we've got room here for you.
Yeah,
so just to let you know.
Yeah, maybe at some point. But the Superformance stuff is, as far as like any of these, whatever you want to call them, continuations, reproductions, right. They're by far they're the highest quality. Like, you see some of the others and the outside looks good, and then you look on the interiors and you're like, oh, this is not cool.
The whole build.
It's all boxy, and it's all whatever. But you sit inside of like their Grand Sport Corvette. You sit inside of that, and it's glorious. It's an amazing interior. So for me, like, the quality was there. I never thought that I would be able to afford one. So this is all, the ability to own cars like this is a surprise to me.
It's awesome. So you get a GT40 from them, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about what you're doing there, or is that against the Lance laws?
Yeah.
No, by the way, we did ask him, is it okay to modify your cars? Because we said, hey, we know some people that actually do this, and I didn't call you out.
Right.
He might have known who I was talking about, but he said, yeah, absolutely. What a matter of fact, people make changes, and they love to bring them in and show them what they've done. And he said, yeah, it influences the future design process. So I think there is something to all that. Like, it's a way for people to customize and maybe improve the design.
I think it's smart of them to pay attention to that stuff. Like, they have to keep their ear to the ground and kind of see what people are getting excited about, and continue to push the brand. Even though the cars that they sell are like these timeless classics, you'll never get tired of seeing an old AC Cobra, right? Like,
nope, never.
Not ever.
Listening, seeing one, nothing.
But especially in Southern California, you go to 20 car shows, and you're going to see 20 of them. Right. And so then you start to, in SoCal, you start seeing, okay, well, how am I going to stand out? How am I going to be different? What am I going to do different? That's not just like that, guys.
Right.
So the approach I took, I ordered the GT40 from them, a Mark I, and I ordered it without the motor and transmission installed. Like, at least in California,
you pick those things with them,
you pick it, and then they have a separate installer do the install work, so that you can register it in Southern California. But I wanted to do it myself because I want to know the car. I want to get to know the car, right, inside and out. And but then once I got it, like, the plans kind of, I want to change this, I want to change that, I wish this was like that, and so it's kind of ballooned.
So next thing you know, you're going all Chip Foose. It's more than just getting to know. It's about kind of making it yours.
It is. definitely now at this point, it's about making it mine. I mean, I ordered it in a custom color in Toyota Cavalry Blue, which nobody's done, obviously. Like what, normally you get the classic
red or
GT40 colors,
right.
Historic colors. But I got mine in the Toyota color, and I already got a custom set of wheels. I get all my wheels from a company called Signature, and they're on the Ruffian Mustang, and I got already a set of wheels for the GT40, and you can get them in any finish that you want, any offset you want. I work with an awesome guy there to get exactly what I need for the car, because I wind up doing fender flares and like crazy stuff like that, so I need very specific one-off wheels. And these guys are a lot more affordable than what you're used to if you're looking at like real high-end wheels.
Right. Well, sounds great. I can't wait to see that. That's probably another 6 months out before you finish that.
It's probably going to be the end of this year.
Oh, okay.
Towards the end, I think we're gonna try to. We'll see how far we get. We're gonna try to go to SEMA again.
Right.
So we'll see if I can get it done in time.
So one thing we haven't talked about yet, which is one of your passions, is, like you said, race.
Yeah.
So people are saying, okay, where do you race these cars? I know because you're our customer, and we chat quite frequently because it's hard to get me to shut up, as you know. So, right, Jay? So I know that you like to take them to autocross courses, and that seems to be a perfect opportunity for you to really push these cars, find their limits, see how you stack up against other cars, right? So
yeah. So if anybody out there doesn't know what autocrossing is all about, basically different organizations will go set up a course with the little yellow cones. They'll go set up a course in a big giant parking lot somewhere where there's plenty of room. They set up a course, and then you run for a time. You right. run as quick as you can. And I've run with SCCA. SCCA does it all over the country. They get very competitive. They have different classes. They're people who travel around the country right. and compete in nationals and championships in their classes and stuff. I've always been super, super casual. I've never gotten hardcore about it. I just enjoy driving the cars hard, and I enjoy crossing the line, right? I enjoy
in one piece,
especially if I get a new car, the first thing I want to do, I feel like I don't know the car. I don't know what's going to happen when it slides out. When I take a corner too fast, I don't know what's going to happen. I want to figure out in a safe place, and so I'll go autocrossing where it can get a little loose. I can spin out.
There's no walls.
And there's no walls.
Other cars.
There's nothing to hit. There's no other cars there. It's super safe. And you get to learn how to counter steer, and when the rear end steps out to bring it back in, and you get to work on your skills as a driver. If you go to big tracks, there's a lot more risk. If you go off track at a big track, you could roll a car. At the minimum, you're gonna cover the side of the car with gravel, and also at a big track, you can memorize the course. You can memorize, and even if you go with an instructor, he'll say, stay wide till you see this crack in the road, right. Then turn in, whatever. Right. And so you're not really learning how to drive. You're memorizing the line. Yeah. Whereas autocrossing, every course is different, and you only get, if it's SCCA, you get 4 runs. You get 4 tries to do the best that you can in this course you've never seen before. At best, you get to walk the course before you drive it, and that's it. I've mostly been running recently with a company called Pure Track, and I think it's puretrack.net is their website, and they're a lot more casual, which suits me really well. I've never been competitive. A lot of times I've modified my car and it kicks me out of one class into a more competitive class or whatever, but I don't care about that stuff. I'm there to improve my skills and to enjoy the car.
You become one with the car. Right?
Yeah, and so Pure Track, these guys are very casual, and you show up.
But what's your reaction when you show up with a supercar or something? People are probably doing a lot more along the lines of what you did with a Ruffian Mustang, which is customizing it, tuning it, tweaking it, just for that application. Mm-hmm. Where you roll in with a supercar, it's probably well set up for something like that, say, compared to a custom design car, right, or not?
It is. There's a few things there. One, like you'll see a lot of high-end cars.
Oh, you do?
Especially at like a pure track event because it's more casual. Now, when you go to SECA, they're so competitive and hardcore that you'll see people show up with their car in a trailer. You know, they roll it off of a trailer, and it's set up with camber and slicks, and it's super competitive, right? Really hard.
It's trailered in.
Yeah.
And
really hardcore. So I like running with these pure track guys because it's mostly just people with their cars that they drive.
And they're not competing against each other.
No,
I mean, almost competing with themselves, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of if you show up with a Volkswagen Beetle, you know that you're not competing with a Corvette. Right. So you kind of set your own goals and just try to improve. More so, it's like lap after lap. Can I get better? Did I make any mistakes? I like to give people rides, take rides, get different people's opinions, see different lines, that kind of a thing. So, but the autocross, you know, that's the great equalizer. I had a supercharged Mustang when I was running real heavily with SCCA, and I've been beaten by a Pinto. I've been beaten by a Ford Escort.
That's humbling.
Yeah, because it's like 50% driver, if not more, and then
surprising.
And then the rest is the car, and so you'll have somebody show up with a high-end exotic, and then they'll just get trounced by somebody in a Miata who knows what they're doing, right? But that's when you can go and everybody thinks they're awesome. If you're a car guy, you think you're a good driver. And then if you go autocrossing, you realize...
You find out. Very humbling experience.
It is humbling. And so it's great to work on and improve over time, and it's super addictive.
I want to go back to this connection between your gaming world, which is your business, and this car world. Because I think there's more parallels than we even imagine. So now we've learned today that it's therapeutic, right?
Yeah.
To work on cars and something tangible, especially when you're spending all day in a virtual environment. Now, what about virtual reality? A lot of your games become pretty commonplace, gaming in virtual reality environments. Do you see any of that at some point in the future impacting the car experience? Is it possible? I mean, we got cars that drive themselves, for example, now. Pretty commonplace, not a big deal. Is it possible we could be experiencing something a little more virtual in the cockpit of a car?
Man, I don't know. I mean, the things that I think about with VR are kind of the other...
Even at the racetrack or at autocross or something not on the street.
I will tell you that racing in a car sim on like your PC or console versus racing a car sim in VR, it's a whole different experience in VR, because the whole deal with VR, for anybody who doesn't know, when you put that headset on, there's two cameras, right? The reason you can see in 3D in real life is because you have two eyeballs in different places. So you get this stereo vision of the world. You're looking at one object, but you're seeing it from two different places. That gives you depth perception. So when we put a VR headset on, suddenly you have the same depth perception that you have in the real world. So when I get into a racing sim in VR and I look over at the car next to me, I can tell that it's 3 feet away. But when I'm playing on a flat screen on a computer or on my television, and you look over at the car next to you, you only get this flat image of what it is, and your depth perception is all gone, and so you don't really know. So there's that aspect of it. Like, it's just that world is so immersive that it's super close. That's why people get motion sick, by the way, in VR, is because it's so convincing that your brain says, I am moving, I am in this world, and your inner ear says, no, you're not, you're sitting still. And because there's a disconnect, your body's like, you must have been poisoned or something, and so then you want to throw up. But it's, you can learn, if you get into VR and you use it for any length of time, that starts to go away. Your body is amazing and will adapt to anything.
Well, what are we hearing? We're hearing that these Formula One drivers of the present and of the future are just going to be game junkies. They're going to start doing that stuff when they're 2, and by the time they're 11, they're going to be in F3 and then F2 and F1 by the time they're 16. I don't know if that's possible, but there are a lot of these guys are in simulators, real guys and gals at very young ages. And supposedly you can come out of a simulator environment now and be pretty damn good on the track. I don't know if that's true, but
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
every kid's dream,
Yeah, I know there's been some shows and stuff. I remember like the Gran Turismo crew did a competition, and the best drivers from there got actual seat time in real cars in a real series. I didn't follow it close enough to know how that went. One of the things I'm super interested in with VR is, I'm designing these cars. I build a fender flare in person and stuff. You'll see a lot of the guys who do concept car work now and they post to Instagram and stuff, do it in 3D, meaning that they do it in like a CAD program or, like Max or Maya or something like that, software that we will use at work to build games. So they'll model a car, which is a lot quicker than like drawing a car. And then once you have it modeled, you can see it from any angle and you can animate it and that sort of thing. If you have that, and you have an engine, you can put it into VR. And so for me, and I'd imagine for other people in the industry that are doing anything like this, if I'm going to build a set of fender flares for the GT40, I can either try to model that stuff out in clay by hand and go that route, all physical and just all there. But you could actually do it quicker on the computer and then go into VR, and you could walk around the car. And it's so real that you feel like you could touch it, right? So you could see it from different angles, and you could look at it, and you could even make adjustments inside of that.
This has to be impacting design studios too, these major manufacturers especially on performance cars, right? I gotta imagine.
Yeah. I would expect so. I think that there's actually as many or more applications for VR and AR. For businesses and rather than
fun,
rather than games. Yeah, everybody thought that it would be this thing
killer app
that would just dominate games, but it's not. It is. Games are awesome in VR, but also games are awesome not in VR. So it doesn't. It doesn't have to go, but there are just a lot of scenarios where like, oh yeah, for a job or for creating a thing in, designing a car in 3D rather than, I don't know how much it must cost to make a full scale like clay model of a car or whatever, but if I can do it on the computer and put a headset on and walk around it and it's believable.
Well, it's incredibly labor intensive. We know that.
Yeah.
We've seen guys shaping cars with clay, and you can imagine the number of hours and the amount of time you spend. Doing that.
I mean, nothing is ever gonna, I don't think, completely replace that at the end of the day. But there's certainly a lot of, I want to try it because here's the other thing. If I can model the car in 3D and see it in VR and make sure that I, as an artist, my eyes, that I like what I see, right? Then I can take that part off of the car and 3D print it, and then have it in the real world.
Wow.
Right. So
brilliant.
All without.
Makes complete sense. The world is definitely changing at a very rapid pace. What's next for you? That's one of the things I've been dying about. Are you going to design and fab another classic car? Are you going to take on an exotic? I mean, not too many people take on exotics from a design standpoint. Well, we were at South County Cars and Coffee this morning, and what we saw is when it comes to exotics, guys will put on turbos on a Lamborghini, for example, put on a chip, take the back end off or the top cover just to show off, kind of the work. But we don't see a lot of modification of these exotic cars. I'm sure there's a reason for that. They're probably incredibly spent a lot of time in the wind tunnel and testing and tuning these cars. But anyway, what's next for you? I mean,
the only reason I try to stay away from the modern stuff, as far as like what I'm going to modify. And the reason is just because of the legalities of it all. Like I had a Mustang, a 98 Cobra Mustang that I supercharged, and I was doing my due diligence, and I made sure that all the parts that I bought were carb legal and everything. But still, when I went to smog it was a nightmare. And you still had to go see a referee, and you had to go through all of this, and it's just brutal. So I think anybody who's modding a modern car, it's super short term, because when it comes time to register that car, you're in trouble, but if you get, a pre-74 car, these are cars that, like, my Mustang, realistically, I'm not going to put that many miles on it, right? I'm going to take it to car shows. I'm going to cruise it on the weekend. So they're pretty, it's pretty open as far as what you can do to those. And that's where I've been, at least the stuff that I've been doing is all pre-74. Now I have done some stuff. It doesn't mean that you can't play with newer technology. So I have a 1969 International Scout that I took the body off of and put it onto a 2009 Jeep Rubicon chassis. And so it's got ABS brakes, it's got cruise control, it's got electronic locking differentials, it's got all the modern stuff, but it looks like an old 69 International Scout, right? So it's kind of cool to have that classic look, but have brand new technology underneath. It's still got airbags in it. It doesn't mean you can't play with the new stuff, but I don't want to play with the new stuff that I got to register as a new thing.
Right.
So.
Well, we were talking to Lance about that too, and he was telling us about the challenges they face just to build a limited production car that, with a limited number of events. So there's a law coming out, and SEMA sponsored it, and it's about to come to fruition.
Yeah, I heard that was coming.
But it's, he claims that they've been working on this thing for years and years and years, and they're a very reputable firm that's been doing this. Mm-hmm. And look at the challenges to do that. So, it really is exhausting to try to do anything like this and stay legal.
I tried, my girlfriend and I, we built a 93 Miata, and we did one of the V8 conversions in that.
No kidding.
And we kept all the smog stuff. We made sure that it was the same year or newer motor out of a Mustang. Kept all the smog equipment. It had cats on it, had a smog pump on it. That motor, we took it to dyno, or to do the smog test. That Miata ran cleaner with the Mustang motor in it than it did with the Miata motor in it, right? So it was a cleaner car. But when we went to the referee, despite all of our best intentions,
nobody seemed to care.
This particular referee said that you couldn't have modified the exhaust at all. His interpretation of the law was that we couldn't modify the exhaust.
So you helped the environment, but you couldn't get it
registered in Southern California because we modified the exhaust. But how are you going to put a Mustang motor and exhaust in a Miata without modifying the exhaust, right? So it's just kind of, that's where you get, and that's what SEMA has always been working towards, is like, really for me, what I don't understand is at the end of the day, if I go get a smog test and my car runs clean, do you care what parts did I put on it?
Well, bureaucracy cares.
Yeah. I'm sure that they.
Well, the other thing you got to ask is, why are we still towing the line in 1974? How long has that timeline been in place?
Yeah.
I mean, we should be in
I heard that
mid to late 80s by now, but we're still stuck in. 70.
I heard that I think Washington State. Did you hear this? That they are passing. It goes into effect this year, I think, where there's no more smog tests.
Wow, wouldn't that be great?
In Washington State.
Never going to happen down
because
there.
They're like, look, it just at the end of the day, like
so
all the cars now run so good and they're so clean and stuff that really we're not having an impact. By forcing everybody to smog, we're spending all this money and we're not really having an impact. The gross polluter stuff now is not cars anymore, so
absolutely.
So I don't know. You're right. California's never going to do anything.
I think it's all about money collection. I'm pulling the conspiracy card here, Chris. No, not really, but it might be. It might be a way to generate.
I know that it costs, like, if you go to buy a catalytic converter, if you want to buy one legally, then it has to be verified to pass. It has to be California specific. They stamp it specific. And it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to go through that. If you're making that catalytic converter, in order for you to have it tested and get that stamp. So like if you go to buy a cat, this one works just as good as this other one, but this one is stamped with California's. It costs twice as much because they have to offset the cost of all that testing and stuff that they had to do, right? So the whole thing is madness. But also, I talked to some guys. You met them, the guys who came down to, father and son who came down to look at the Ruffian. They were on vacation from Sweden.
They were great guys.
And came down to look at the Ruffian Mustang. I sent them to Dean's because they were, I didn't have the car at home. They wanted to see it. big fans on Instagram. But they were telling me what they have to deal with in Sweden.
It's even worse.
It's a nightmare. Yeah. Like you can't change wheels. You can't change motors. Like it's just.
Yeah. So the Ruffian won't be shipped over there anytime soon.
No, so it wouldn't be legal in Sweden, So at the same time, like I am, we can complain all we want, but actually
could be worse.
Things are pretty good in California.
Could be worse.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to have to wrap it up due to time constraints. But Chris, I can't thank you enough. You've been an awesome guest. We've had a lot of fun. This has been a great exploration, and everything from gaming to cars to modifying cars and what turns your propeller. So I just want to say thank you.
Nice. Well, I appreciate the. It's funny. I never expected that storing my cars would lead to a podcast, but hey, you
never know.
You guys have been awesome, and I love every time I visit with you guys and drop a car off, pick a car up. It's always a nice experience.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind.
It's a good solution for somebody like me. I have a 2-car garage at home, and right now it's full of a torn apart GT40 and all of the pieces of the GT40. So everything else, gets stored here.
We're here for you, Chris. Thank you. Very kind.
And that'll do it for us here today at the SoCal Classic Car Podcast. I'm Jay Marash. Again, that was your host, Dean Marash, and we had our customer Chris Ashton here in the booth today. Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you so much for everybody for listening. We are having such a great time making this podcast, and we hope that you continue to listen, and we really appreciate your support. If you want to hear more podcasts, you can go to SoCalCarStorage.com/media to find all the episodes, or you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and other major podcast outlets. Again, we are the SoCal Classic Car Podcast. Thanks a lot for stopping by, and happy driving.